Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're going to be taking a look at the MSI GTX750 Ti gaming. Now, as of late, the gaming stuff, the black and red, it's been pretty much faultless, and they've been doing an absolutely stonkingly good job with the products that they've been turning out. Quality, overclocking ability, performance, and most importantly, price. And I can tell you that the GTX 750 Ti is no different. This is actually the best looking GTX 750 Ti that I've had personally, and from my own taste and point of view, that I've seen at all. This one is the only one that I've personally had, because I have tested the Asus and obviously the OEM one. Now the OEM one just had a horrible little Intel style OEM heatsink on it. The Asus one was two fans, but it was just a lump of machined aluminium on the top. This one is actually what we'd call, or we would understand as being a more kind of mainstream style cooler with heat pipes, and then it's got separate fans, fins on the inside. It's what, you know, everyone would be used to as calling a graphics card heatsink. Unlike a lot of the gaming ones though, the shroud that actually goes around the outside of the card is plastic. Normally with the MSIs, they are metal, but to be fair, this is going to be the same price as what Nvidia quoted the OEM version to be. This card is on the market in the UK today for £113, 113 GBP. And it's an absolutely cracking looking card, and when you look at the specs, as we'll talk to you a little bit more in a minute, 'cause it comes with a gaming app, so you can overclock it or make it quiet with a single flick of a switch on your desktop, but it already looks the absolute nads. Now some of the other GTX 750s that I've seen from the other vendors, they've all been sort of around the £130 mark plus. So the fact that this is 115 quid, it may only be a £15 difference, but when you're only talking, you know, the difference between 115 and 130 quid, that's still over 10% saving. So it's already, it looks the part, and it's also cheaper than the others as well. It does have a brace across the top here to help stop from, or stop it kind of warping and sagging, but to be fair, there's no weight to this card at all, so it's nothing that you really need to worry about. On the back of the card here, you can see that it's meant to, or it's got the points here to have a 6-pin PCI Express power supply connector, and also you can see that the heatsink has been designed to have one in there as well, but the final retail version of it didn't have it on there. And when I did the preview of this, a lot of people were kicking up a fuss going, oh, it's not got that, it's not going to overclock, it's not got that, oh my god, oh, I'm going to buy something else, because they obviously knew what they were talking about. But I am quite happy to say that it made absolutely sweet FA difference. Now we're going to talk about the performance of this little thing in a minute, but it's one to stick by, because this has been an eye-opener, and I mean a big eye-opener, because this is an absolute cracker of a little card. So don't let the fact that it's got a not got PCI Express power turn you off, because this is something you may have to get used to with the smaller cards, because to be fair, from the performance that I've seen out of this, which you'll see in a minute, it wasn't necessary, and like I said, I do want to talk to you about that in depth in a bit. Other than that, it's a pre-overclocked model, which you can select what level of overclock that you want in the gaming app. It's got 2 GB of VRAM on it, as they normally do, which is still 2 GB. It's going to be ample for 1080p or maybe slightly lower res gaming, depending on the how many of your textures and stuff you turn up in your games. But anyway, right from the very beginning, what I will say is if you want to go and have a look at the graphs on the Overclock 3D website, where we compare this with the OEM version and the Asus card that we've done as well. I've not got the Gigabyte version in the graphs yet, but I should have done really, but never mind. Anyway, so I'm now going to move on. We're going to get this in the graphics card test rig, and we'll see how we get on. Okay then peeps, so a quick look at the bench rig. We've got Vantage 4 Extreme 3960X at 4.6, 32GB of memory. Yes, that is overkill, but they're 8GB sticks. So we've just got 4 sticks in there because it's a quad channel board. They are 2400 MHz rated, but they're running at 2133. There's a Corsair AX860 power supply in there. Yes, it is overkill for this graphics card, but it's just part of our static bench rig stuff. We've got a 240GB GTX Neutron for the operating system and the benchmarks. We've got a 240GB Force LS for Uplay, Steam and Origin. And then we've got a H105 with SP120 Quiet Editions for cooling. And then we've got AF's LEDs white, 120s in the front and a 140 in the back. So if we spin round, I really should use my better tripod for this, but I like using this one because it's my mum's. Right, so we have the MSI Gaming App, and that brings that up when you first click it. Basically, it says that we've got the overclock mode, gaming mode, and the silent mode, and we've also got the cool down feature as well. But what we'll do is we'll click this, and it's disappeared down in the bottom corner, but we'll put it up here. So at the moment we're in overclock mode, which gives us a GPU clock of 1085. We do need to bear in mind that that will still GPU 2 boost up, which is why we've got this section up here set. Because when we load Unigine in a sec, the GPU core clock will spike because of the GPU boost 2. So this is a way of us to track how high that goes, because I've set it to store the maximums. So we've got the GPU core clock, memory clock, GPU temperature, GPU fan speed, and the GPU fan speed RPM. So we can actually see the maximums for all of those. But if we put the gaming app into silent mode, what that then does is it will change the core clock. So we've gone down from 1085 MHz down to 1020, and it changes the fan profiles as well. If we go to gaming mode, it will go from 1020 up to 1059 MHz. And then if we go into overclock mode, it's now back up to 1085 MHz. What I'm going to do is load Unigine up quickly, and we're just going to let that loop. But what I have done, set the power meter up for you. Now we always get an initial spike on Unigine, and I personally don't take any notice in the initial spike, and I go by the actual amount that it runs as it starts to loop through. And you'll see there so far we've seen 244 watts maximum pull. Now the thing is that's running through 244 watts. Again, it doesn't sound like a lot with our test rig, but with a very immensely basic graphics card in there, the most we've managed to get it, or the least we've managed to get it to pull, is 212 watts. Just to give you kind of an idea on the wattage that this graphics card's pulling. This compared to the Asus card with the 6-pin, the Asus card with the 6-pin was 257 watts. Not a massive difference, but when we're down this low is a large enough difference. But what we're going to do is we're going to let Unigine run now for a good 30-40 minutes, and then we're going to come back and have a look to see at the GPU boost and then the temps. Well then peeps, it's stuttering away because it's in 2560 and 8 times AA mode. So what I'm going to do is, come on mouse, there we go, quit, okay, escape, and then we will close that. Right, so what we can see once I've zoomed you in so that you can see rather than just me, there we go, right, so we've gone from our GPU clock of 1085 without doing anything. It's boosted up to 1228 megahertz. Memory stayed the same. Maximum temperature is 54 degrees. Fan speed maximum was 33%, and that was with a fan speed of 942 RPM. Now, what I'm going to do is get us set up to do a bit of overclocking. Okay, so we're all geared up for some overclocking. Now, I need to explain a couple of things. The afterburner that I'm using is the latest beta 18. But if you use the older, fully fledged version, you don't get any core voltage changes that you can do at the top, and you also don't get to adjust your core clock as much. On this one you can wang it right up. But with the older version, I'm going to show you the original test that I got, because this is I got given this beta 18 because of the 290X, and it actually works pretty well with this 750. It is available on their website to download now, I think, as well. But anyway, if I go on here, 115 offset, and hit apply, I'm not touching the memory, don't forget. Basically, you can see it goes up to 1200 over here. So now I remember that I need to add another 20, so we go up to 135. Right, so we're now up to, over here, it's just about to change, 1220 megahertz. Now I got 12, that was the most I could get previously. The Asus card stops at 1285 megahertz. And just so that you can see, we've got the core clock and everything up here that I showed you previously. The Asus was 1249 megahertz. 1349 megahertz up here, but from a 1280 down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open Unigine, double click, come on, there we go, open Unigine, and I'm going to let this little beauty run, and I will bring you back in about 30 minutes. Right, okay, so I'm just going to quit out of this. Okay, so I'm just going to move Unigine down out of the way. Now, what we can show you is still 1220 megahertz here, 135 boost, but it's actually gone up to 1363. So even though there's a wider gap, as in the MSI started life lower at 1220 megahertz, it's actually boosted up past what the Asus did, even though it had that PCI Express connector. Now, what I'm going to do, because this is all literally, I haven't seen any of this yet, and I've written the main review and everything already, this is now unlocked things. Now I'm not going to touch this core voltage, because then that would not be fair on the Asus. But I'm going to keep pushing this core clock up a bit further now, and I'll go up as high as 1285, and we'll see how far we can get. Okay then peeps, so I've managed to get mine without touching the core voltage up to a plus of 200, which if I slide this over, that is where the Asus card stopped anyway. It was a firmware issue that you can't push past that. But the Asus version then GPU boosted up to 1349 megahertz. Now, if I close this, the MSI without its PCI Express power connector has gone up to 1413.5. We had a maximum GPU temperature of 59 degrees. The fan speed went up to a whopping 36%, which was 999, I think it was, max. There we go. Oh, sorry, 1114 RPM for an absolute maximum. So, yeah, there we go. Proof that the MSI is an absolute bonkers card, but more importantly, proof that you don't need that PCI Express power connector. I have tried playing around with the voltages and stuff like that, but it does start falling over. I can't get it to pass 3D Mark Vantage once I start playing with the core voltage. So it's actually best left alone. And I would say that at 1400 megahertz, probably not going to be expecting to try and get much more from it either. But yeah, an absolute ridiculous score. Now the rest of the results that I've got are all based off of the overclock that I got that was running at 1369 megahertz, which was when I could only get 1220 on the boost. It's so late in the day now. The main review is written, and I'm not going to go through all the testing again because I'll be here till the end of the end of time. So if you want to go and have a look at the results, you can click the link in the review. But what I will do is I'm going to get this set up, and I will show you some results of the original testing in a sec. Okay then, so a full set of validation scores. We can see down here 1220 megahertz. You can also see with the older version of Afterburner, no core voltage, power limit was already maxed out, core clock was completely maxed out, put 200 on the memory so that we went from 1350 to 1450, and that gave us a 2220 score. Also over here you can see that our core clock went up to 1363.7 and our GPU clock was matching the memory clock down here. We can also see that we had a maximum GPU temperature of 53 degrees, 32% fan speed, 951 RPM. Again, if you want to see those results in a graph, go and take a look on the website, because there's all of our results there, the game results, everything that you could possibly need. I'm going to show you this graph, and then I'm also going to show you a game graph next, but if you want to see any more, then you need to go to the website. Okay, it may be an old bench, but it's actually a really good benchmark for stability when it comes to graphics cards. I've known all of the other benchmarks pass, but 3D Mark Vantage fail, and it's generally when you're really trying to push those overclocks that Vantage will fall over. But as you can see with this, we were still completely maxed out. Same setup as before. Temperatures went up to 58 degrees though. There's a shader section on Vantage that is particularly torturous. On some of the old AMD cards, they used to scream and shout, and that was the point. All the fans used to spin up. But anyway, it's a great little benchmark, and you can still get it for free. Anyway, so we had an X score of 11,694. That then gave us a GPU score of 11,250, and the CPU score is actually relatively high because of the CPU that we're using. But again, we always test our graphics cards with all the same rigs. So I'm going to show you the graph next quickly, and then after that I'll also show you one of the game graphs, just so that you can have a look as well. Don't forget, if you want to be able to read it properly, you may need to blow your screen up full screen, hit F11, also hit pause so that you can see it clearly, and if it's a little bit granulated or anything, you may need to turn the quality levels on your computer up to sort of 720 or maybe 1080 for the video settings, that is. And then if you do the F11 and pause it, you should be able to see everything quite clearly. Hiya peeps, so you've made it to the conclusion. And one thing I will say is this is the first time that I've made a video and I've tried to make the door frame disappear, because it's always been there. And everyone's always known that I'm recording at the end of a spare bedroom, which is my office at home, because it's not all this glam with a massive office somewhere and all that kind of stuff. It is just a spare room. But I've painted it, and yeah, I suppose I should do a little bit of a subscriber video about it. Anyway, on topic, the award for the MSI, undoubtedly a gold. And to be fair, it is a big grin one, because the smaller cards, I generally don't even bother with stuff like the 750 Ti. I normally let one of the other boys do it, because I can't review everything. Everyone wants me to make videos of everything, and I can't. And I've got a couple of boys that they've all got full-time jobs. Like Gary does the odd case written review. Brian does a lot of our peripherals, and he also does motherboards and CPUs and stuff at times. We've also got James Riley that started recently, who's doing the low power stuff. But, you know, still I do have to find time to try and get everything done. But these ones, they tickled my fancy a little bit, and I wanted to have a play. And this one, I'm actually really glad that I did. Because this graphics card, like I've said to you before, it's around the same sort of money, if not less, than the OEM one was being quoted as being at launch. I found it for sale in the UK at £113. Now, with that £113, everyone was moaning about the fact that it had didn't have the PCI Express connector on it, saying it wasn't going to overclock and it should have had it, and you can see it was there. But as I've proved in this review, it doesn't need it. And I would go as far to say the 750 Ti in total doesn't need it. These cards are not being restricted by power. I personally think, yes, you know, with the Asus one, the GPU Boost 2, I would say that's probably a silicon lottery thing. But one of the things I will say with the Asus, it had a PCI Express thing in the wrong place. You know, it was up near the actual like mounting point of the card. It was up here. It didn't particularly need it, and having it on there didn't make the overclocks any better. This one, it's not there. Also, what you can say is it's cheaper, it looks better, and it performs better. I don't know whether this is a really pristine card, or whether this is just the way that the MSIs work. because the actual cooler on it's so much better than the other ones, and they don't cherry pick these. This card has actually already been to a website, and I seem to have been able to have got a little bit more out of it than they did. But they're not cherry picked for us. They just get sent a batch full of stuff. They're not the cherry picked up stuff is generally their overclock series, where they check to make sure it overclocks. So this is probably a good indication of the sort of stuff that you may be getting. I would say I would be expecting with the 750s, I would be expecting you all to be running quite easily without touching your voltage 1200 megahertz, and then the GPU boost taking you that, a little bit further depending on how far it wanted to go. As we saw with mine running at 1220, it then gave me another 150 megahertz boost on top of that for me to get up near that 1369 marker that we quoted. And to be fair, 150 megahertz boost when you're already running 1220 megahertz without any extra volts is, that's bonkers mental. To quote the great Al Murray, it's bonkers mental. And it's a cracking little card, and it does all of this for 115 quid. And something that we do need to kind of like point out with this is it is a budget card, but you've still got a good cooler on it. It's still quite small. You're going to get the good MSI warranty as well. But I wouldn't. We do test at 2560 by 1400, but I see this as being a cracking graphics card for 1080. Those of you out there that are looking to build yourself a Steam box or something, those of you out there on a limited budget, if you're going into the graphics card segment and you want to buy yourself a graphics card, my personal thoughts are the 750 Ti is the place where you start. Obviously you can get older cards and other brands and stuff, but I really rate the 750 Ti. To the point that we're going to be doing some system builds in the not too distant future, where we're going to be picking the parts for you, prices, and showing you where to go and all that kind of stuff. And in our basic system, the one with the graphics card, first graphics card, is the 750 Ti. And as I've said, you've seen if you've looked at the main review, which you can still go and click, you can see the frames a second that we're getting in the games. Don't forget, we run all of those games maxed out as well. So we've turned everything onto high or ultra. We've turned all the AA up really high as well. Some of those frames per second might jump by 10 frames a second, just turning the anti-aliasing down to half what it was, or say it's on 8, knocking it down to 2 or 4, you may get another 10 frames per second on your average. And this is an absolute cracker. But the most important thing is it's doing all of this running off the PCI Express power and not even hitting 60 degrees. It's fucking brilliant. Really like it. Really like it. And to the point where the MSI Dragon Rig, in fact, I'm going to stop the camera quickly so I can grab it. Right, I've grabbed it because it was just out of shot. The MSI Dragon Rig, I was going to put a 270 in it because it's really only going to be used like a workstation rig and testing little bits and bobs in it. That was going to be getting the AMD 270, but with this and the fact that it's got no power connector on it, because something else I need to kind of point out is it's got no power connector. That means you're putting less strain on your power supply, and it doesn't use any wattage either. Less strain on your power supply, but it's less cabling as well, so it makes your rig tidier. You're not going to have to, run it about. Doesn't need it. It's just a shame you can't SLI it, really, because otherwise you could have a crazy tidy rig. But I've actually decided that I'm going to use that in that. Now I've got both of them. They, it was always kind of on the cards that I could use it for future testing and rigs and stuff like that. I don't generally get any issues with stuff like that, and I've personally chosen to go from the 270 up to this, and I would say the 270's is got a metal cooler and it's a little bit nicer, but because of the low power, the fact that it's actually quicker, and the fact that it doesn't need that PCI Express connector, that's why I'm switching. This will be doing probably, I think, a time-lapse build in this. I'm not sure whether we're going to put it on this channel or the Rush Kit channel, but this is the one that I'm not sure whether the lights are going to show. I don't think they are. This is the one where the outside around the red all kind of glitters and sparkles and captures the light and pops because it's mega reflective. It's actually motorway reflective. Anyway, so you will be seeing a 750 Ti. That's how much I rate it, is I actually like it and want to use it. So that's why it's got a gold award, and that's why I would say if you're wanting to spend around the kind of 120, 130, maybe even up to the £140 mark, you don't necessarily need to spend an awful amount of money, and you could just get yourself one of these instead. But for now at least, this is Tiny Tom Logan with another review for you, out. Ding!